Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of the Daleks Master Plan. Sadly not available on DVD, it's on the Lost in Time DVD, but that's downstairs at the moment. What I'm going to do with this review is I'm going to split it into two parts, like my friend Ollie Pajak, aka Mr. TARDIS 11 did. I'm going to review the first 6 episodes first, in one filming block, and then the remaining 6 episodes, so 7 to 12. In that I might have the DVD for that bit. But yeah, this review might be slightly longer then, but I do not want to split it into 2 parts, so it's just going to be a long one, I guess. Depends on how long each block is. So here we go, here's the Daleks Master Plan, starting off with this block with episodes 1 to 6. Before we start, I'd just like to know that there are 2 writers on this story. Terry Nation writes the first 5 episodes and also episode 7, and Dennis Spooner writes episodes 6 and 8 to 12. Yeah, they kind of swap, so you could say first half is Terry Nation, second half is Dennis Spooner, apart from the middle 2 episodes, which kind of swap. This is so Terry Nation could write the Christmas episode, which is The Feast of Stephen. So Dennis Spooner was given episode 6 as a supplement, probably. I don't know why both 2 writers were on it. I guess maybe the story was too big for one writer, so Dennis Spooner jumped in to help with the second half of the story. And I'll say it was him. I would say he's the one, certainly pre-rewatch of episodes 7 to 12, he is the one who gets the story moving a bit more and flowing into the incredible climax. But some more on that later, I should say, in the second half. Terry Nation, on the other hand, is better at the build-up, I would say. He does great build-up. I suppose he does 7 episodes, technically, if you include Mission to the Unknown. But that's just more hinting about what's happening. But part 1, we see that Brent Vaughan is trying to find Mark Roy, and he discovers the Daleks are there, and the Varga plants, by the way, don't really play as much of a major role in this, certainly in the first half of the story, to Mission to the Unknown. There are mentions of them, but if you miss Mission to the Unknown, you might be confused. So, just letting you know, there might be a bit, you might not, there isn't as much of them in here. And so, Brett eventually meets up with the Doctor. Meanwhile, Stephen is still unwell after getting poisoned, in his blood poisoned after his injury at the end of the Myth Makers. And eventually, he does get better thanks to Brett's pills. And soon they discover the Daleks are planning to take over the universe, and so have to escape from Kemble, the planet they landed on. And they try heading to Earth. However, the Daleks, along with Guardian of the Solar System, Marvik Chen, they try to stop them and send the ship that they stole, which was Chen's ship, to Desperus, which is a penal colony, a prison planet, basically, where only ships going there are ships delivering inmates. Desperus. Wow, what a great name! It sounds so comforting. It's just like calling a planet Desolation. Reference. So on Desperus, the crew have to quickly get away again, so they could get back to Earth. However, one of the inmates has slipped aboard and has Katerina hostage until they take him back to Kemble, which would be a good idea to get the TARDIS, but they need to go to Earth to warn them about the Daleks first. And this guy is just being a really big cunt at the moment. Yeah, they didn't need this guy on board. It's just so that Katerina can die and to have a cliffhanger. Yeah, this is where Katerina dies, at the start of part 4. Less than 5 minutes in. Not 5 episodes, 5 minutes, although less than 5 episodes as well. But less than 5 minutes into the episode, she's dead. Some really awkward reconstruction CGI of the bodies a few minutes later in the reconstruction as well. Yeah. And despite not knowing her very long, they're all so sad about it for the next minute. Which I suppose, it was a shock, but although we don't actually see them flying off into space, in some of the new series stories actually show some of the side characters dying, or at least how. So, anyway, but yeah, I think it would have been a bit more effective if we'd seen Katerina and Dick. I'm calling him Dick because I can't remember his actual name. I'm just calling him Dick because he is one. We could have seen them fly out to wind tunnel. They could have just fallen out of the hatch, I suppose. Maybe wires weren't a thing in those days. But you never know. But anyway, once arriving on Earth, they try and meet up with Brett's friends, but he turns out he's working for the Daleks and with Chen. Anyway, and Chen has now branded Brett a traitor, along with another space security agent who is now dead, along with the Doctor and Stephen. And Brett is killed by his sister, Sarah Kingdom, whilst helping the Doctor and Stephen escape. And Sarah eventually catches up to them, but they are transported to the planet Myra, and eventually the Doctor and Stephen eventually convince Sarah that Brett was innocent and they're telling the truth, which upsets Sarah because they were siblings. Although I would have liked a few more minutes of Sarah maybe realising what she has done and getting upset about it. I thought she may have been upset for a minute or two, a few seconds, but it turns out she just seemed to have run into a creature, one of the inhabitants of the planet, and yeah, if we don't worry so much on that, maybe we could have another minute or two of Katerina maybe realising Sarah realising her mistake and maybe being upset about it. And then maybe the Doctor and Stephen come to her saying, you may have made a mistake, but you can rectify it. You can get sorted for goodness by helping us. You help us, he will forgive you in afterlife. Whatever you believe in. My girl. Doctor, don't try to be hilarious. Sorry, my dear boy. Sorry. My boy. Anyway, eventually the Daleks come to Myra on the... as they've been informed by Chen, who pretends, along with his second-in-command, they say they deliberately sent the traitors to Myra, and the Daleks can come over and kill them. And the reason the Daleks are chasing them down is because the Doctor had stolen the uranium, which is the core for the Daleks' time disruptor. So they're trying to get that back. And eventually the Doctor decides to hand it over to the Daleks after they escape the Daleks and head back to Kemble. The Doctor then decides to hand over a fake uranium, and in exchange for him and his friends escaping. He manages to do so, and just about, thanks to G-Force, Stephen is not killed. So, yeah, never trust a Dalek, basically, is the message. And they eventually escape, leading to the next 6 episodes. Now, we'll get around to that in a bit, but this first half of the episode, there has been good build-up. It's been a really good build-up. It's actually some of the best build-up. It does take 5-6 episodes to building everything up. But it's decent. It's really fun. It's more enjoyable than some of the part 1, part 2, sometimes part 3 build-ups and other episodes in shorter stories. So, yeah, it's actually more enjoyable, and I do enjoy going to different places. We start off on Kemble, then we go to Desperos, then we go to Earth, then we're going to Myra, and then we go back to Kemble. Next episode, we're going to Earth in the past, twice, 60s, and then, well, one of them would be present at time or slight future at time of the episode being broadcast. And then go to another planet, then we go back to Earth in the past again, even further back, and then back to Kemble. So it's all over it's going back and forth, going to different places. Yeah, we go back and forth from Kemble quite a lot, but it's necessary. Kemble is the hub of all this everything going along, and in this half of the story, it's where the TARDIS was left. So once they got to the TARDIS, they can use that to travel in time as well as space, and the Daleks will realise that as well and go after them. Just like in The Chase. So this is, it's basically two stories in one. 3 if you include Mission to Own. In fact, one variation I've heard stories to do parts 1 to 6, then parts 7 to 10, then parts 11 and 12, and have those kind of like 3 stories. And yeah, that does work as well. Plus Mission to the Unknown, which preludes this bit this half in particular. And the Doctor even finds McCroy's her tape. I will say the Dalek voices in this half of the story are better than what they were in Mission to the Unknown, and even in some cases The Chase. So they're getting better. Marvick Chen is a great villain. He is formidable, and Kevin Stoney does a superb job. He also comes back as another villain in season 6, Tobias Vaughn, in The Invasion, and he's equally as brilliant there. Brett is great. He does seem to come off like a bit of a dick in the first episode, but then he helps Stephen, and then other episodes he's mostly a good character, but he is a bit of a trigger-happy character. He's basically Duggan if he killed people. Duggan, of course, is a City of Death character who likes to punch people quite a lot and gets into fisticuff fights. Eventually, one of his punches saved the entire human race. Sarah's a great character, but she'll get better I think she'll get better in the next half of the story when she actually is a proper companion. But like I said, I think she should have had another minute just to grieve over her brother's death and be upset that it was her, have the emotional side, realising it was her fault, and she may have also jeopardised the entire universe as well because of that. Yeah, quite a few people are stubborn in this as well. They all want the Terranium. Give us the bloody Terranium. Give it to us now. Exterminate. Everyone really wants this Terranium. And yeah, Daleks, like I say, Space Security agents just want it because they think they've been told to by Marvick Chen. Without question. To just believe a full story. Even Chen and his second in command even discuss it with each other. And Stephen even berates Sarah for not questioning Chen, nor would she listen to Brett. This first half of the story has been really fun and really interesting. I do think the bits on Desperate were a bit of a filler. I think the second half of part 3, but I can see why they needed it, so they could have an excuse to kill Katerina. And yeah, it would have been that bit I would have preferred. If it was Vicky in this, if she had left in the Mythmakers, stayed on to this, it would have been that bit that I would have said, yeah, that's it, and she would do it to save the Doctor and Stephen, like Katerina did here. I don't know if it's me. Sorry, if it's me, but Katerina's voice, I don't know what to make of it. It sounds really soft, but screechy as well. It's soft but screechy as well. I don't know if this is Adriana Hill's actual voice, or if it's just the character, if it's just her putting a voice on for the character. But it sounds like a soft screech at times. Sarah is a bit better, but she does have a bit more of a bossy authority tone as well, especially before she realises the truth. Might just be me. Brett Vaughan sounds exactly how the Brigadier sounds, as it's Nicholas Courtney playing the role. So Nicholas Courtney will definitely kept his own voice here, and definitely did when he was the Brigadier. Yay! Okay, final thoughts on the first half of the episode. First half of the episode. Story. It's great. It's really great. It's a slight slow build up, but it's still fun and enjoyable. And going from place to place, it's still really good. And I'm looking forward to the second half of the story. Apart from the next episode, episode 7, which I know is the worst of the story. Even worse than Mission to the Unknown. But once we get past that, we've got the better half of the story to come. Episodes 8 to 12 are fantastic. So, yeah, this was a great first half, but the better half. But once we get past the worst episode of the story, then we're on to the best half. Okay, so that's it from parts 1 to 6. I shall now see you in parts 7 to 12. Okay, so we're back with parts 7 to 12. And I did bring the DVD this time, just to flash the DVD. And that's it. Okay, this is definitely the better half of the story. After rewatching the story, it is definitely the better half. Feast of Stephen aside. We'll do that one quickly, to get that out of the way. The Feast of Stephen, it's basically just a break. I think the BBC high-ups, or someone, might have been the producers, said that as it's going out on Christmas Day, this episode, the only episode from the entirety of the classic series to ever go out on Christmas Day, by the way. They would either take a Christmas season off, like in the mid Tom Baker years. Some of the Tom Baker years, they took a month or two break between seasons and then come back in after leave at the end of November, start of December, and then come back start of January, or they would just air not on Christmas Day, basically. Although some of those, one of the Face of Evil, which in season 14, which was came back after one of these breaks, was on New Year's Day. So it's theoretical that the week before, which could have been the Deadly Assassin Part 4 if they had started later and it just went on with no break, would have been Christmas Day, although the Deadly Assassin Part 4 is not really one I would consider a Christmas episode. So maybe they were right in having a gap that year. And they do the same between State of Decay and Warriors Gate in season 18. Are those the only two? I'm sure season 15 had a break. I might be wrong. 16 didn't, I don't think. 17 I don't think did. 13 I don't think did. 12 certainly didn't. It started mid-December anyway. Not late, mid. Anyway, so either the seasons took a break over the Christmas period and came back in January, or they started in January, like most of the John Pertwee and Peter Davison seasons, and Colin Baker, and actually late December in some Pertwee's cases. So late December, early January, or they would skip the period overall, or just not broadcast an episode on Christmas Day. This episode being the exception. Funny enough, a year earlier, Dalek Invasion of Earth Part 6 would air on Boxing Day. Coincidental. Daleks every Christmas, even with this one being on Christmas Day itself. Yay! Wonder if it's tradition. Anyway, I rambled about that too much. So it's not even Daleks, to be honest. There's no Daleks in this one. There's no Mavic Chen, there's no Delegates. It's just the Doctor, Stephen and Sarah going to Earth, Liverpool, apparently, in 1966, or Christmas 65, or Christmas 66. Oh, are we doing a Russell T. Davies era thing where the timeline's shifted? Because I think it's supposed to be 66, it's set. Could be 65. But if it's 66, then we're doing a Russell T. Davies era thing where it's actually set 1 year into the future of when broadcast. And anyway, after that, they then go to the 1920s, apparently, 1920s film set, and they have to, and it's just, it's not really anything important going on, because the BBC didn't want, because they wanted it to be a Christmas episode, and just Christmassy stuff, not really related to anything else in the plot. Then it's basically like Mission to the Unknown. It's a cutaway. It's just something else. It's something completely different to the other 11 episodes. And it doesn't work. It's just the Doctor getting into a scrapes with the police in Liverpool, 60s Liverpool. Stephen having to go and rescue him. Sarah almost getting caught as herself whilst trying to fix the TARDIS. and then them going to 1920s film set in America and having a bit of a chase. And there's even some, certainly in the reconstruction, there's some silent film type text displaying what's going on sometimes. Strangely enough, if this is supposed to be 1920s America film set, then the films should be silent, but we see people saying lines. So unless that's just the sound's not picking that up, and they're just saying that, and you just see, when you see the films themselves, they're just showing the people moving their mouths like they're saying stuff, then I guess that makes sense. But if the film is actually picking up the sound as well, then the date needs to be moved to at least a decade later, to the early 1930s, maybe even later, late 1930s, early 1940s, because that doesn't really make as much sense, because silent films in the 1920s were silent. There were no talkies until 28, 29, with Blackmail, Alfred Hitchcock's Blackmail. I think that was 1929. So it was then that we got the first talking picture. So, yeah. Wow, he did films for a long time. He did them for over 50 years. He died in 1980. So after that commotion, which, yeah, it's just filler, we get back to the plot of the episode where the Doctor, Stephen and Sarah discover that someone is following them through time and space, and it turns out it's the meddling monk! Yeah, the meddling monk is back! Yes! And he's got a score to settle with the Doctor. Unfortunately, he doesn't get to settle it, but we do get some really good interactions between him and the Doctor, Stephen and Sarah. Meanwhile, the Daleks have discovered that the Terranium core the Doctor gave them was fake, and now they're trying to chase them through time and space yet again to try and catch it. This time it doesn't take as long as in the chase. In the chase it was about 4 or 5 episodes, this time around it's only 3. After meeting the monk and getting away from the volcano planet, the monk has tried to sabotage the Doctor's TARDIS, but he fixes it after a quick stop at an English cricket match against Australia. I think it might be New Zealand. Again, I'm not sure when this is set, 1966 maybe, 65? And then we get to a celebration in London. I theorise it's New Year's Day. I think they're there for the New Year's Day celebrations, as Volcano was broadcast on New Year's Day, 1966. Making that the first New Year's Day episode. And there'll be a few more of those in the classic series. Day of the Daleks Part 1 and The Face of Evil Part 1. It's with the new series there isn't as many of those. We've only had 2. End of Time Part 2 and Resolution, the latter of which was this year's New Year's special. Yay! Not to mention 2 episodes of Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures also broadcasting on New Year's Day. Series 1 episodes 12 and 13 in Torchwood's case, and the Sarah Jane Adventures pilot episode. Titles, I believe, were Captain Jack Harkness, End of Days, I might be wrong with that one, and Invasion of the Bane, respectively. But after that, the Doctor and his friends then land in ancient Egypt, as does the monk, and the Daleks follow them to there, and stuff with the Egyptians happens in the case with Stephen and Sarah, and the Doctor and the monk is made to help find the Doctor by the Daleks, and eventually the Doctor finds him and puts him into a coffin, and then Stephen and Sarah escape and find the monk, and then they all get captured by the Daleks. Then Mavic Chen decides to use the companions and the monk as bait for the Doctor to hand over to Terranium, and the Doctor agrees, but on his terms. He decides to have a swap over, and he gives Chen the Terranium core, but they all have to leg it afterwards. He also manages to sabotage the monk's TARDIS, so monk's in trouble again, I think. He makes the monk's TARDIS looks like his own, and the monk thinks he's got the Doctor's TARDIS, but he discovers it's his own. And then the Doctor and Stephen have to travel back to Kemble in a last attempt to stop the Daleks and Chen from taking over the world, freeing the Delegates after the Daleks betrayed them, and eventually acquiring the Time Destructor to eventually destroy the Daleks. It doesn't have an effect on them to begin with, but after trying to destroy it, it does. That's basically the summary of part 7 to 12, and let's not forget the memorable first breaking the wall scene where the Doctor wishes everyone at home a very Merry Christmas. Okay, the positives. Most of the stuff in parts 8 to 12. The negatives, most of what happens in part 7. Part 7 is, like I said, it's basically just something else. It's a break, basically. It's a break between a pretty serious setup and a pretty serious follow-up. Though with Dennis Spooner writing, the follow-up is a bit more humorous and a bit more comedic, certainly with when the meddling monk's around anyway. And to be honest, for someone who I haven't been a fan of Dennis Spooner's stories in Doctor Who, apart from the Time Meddler, I thought Reign of Terror and the Romans were awful. Although I think he was a good script editor because he did help out with other stories. I think maybe in the middle of series season 2. Okay, so maybe he wasn't that great. But certainly did a better job than his own writing credits. A bit like Helen Rayner in the new series. But once we got to the Time Meddler, that's where he stepped up, a bit like Helen Rayner in the new series when she wrote the Sontarans instead of the Daleks. And then he came on to help with this one, and I think he's just a completely different writer to where we saw him early last season. But he's improved on what he wrote at the very end of the last season instead. And he writes a great follow-up. Okay, he also wrote part 6 as well. That was great. But it was still pretty much part of that 6-part setup. Then we got the cutaway episode 7. And then we've got the next 3, 8, 9 and 10 with the monk back. And it just feels so great. It's so fun. It's not the best part of the story. I would put that down to the last 2. But it's still fun. It's really enjoyable and really engaging. I'm glad part 10 survives because that is a very good episode. It's not as good as 11 or 12. But still think it's a very good episode nonetheless. And yeah, it's apart from Feast of Stephen, where they're just running around in a few times. It's just I don't really enjoy the police story stuff. The studio stuff I probably would, but everyone is screaming and shouting quite a lot. Usually when they get there, when everyone's there, and when they're all going back, without visuals, sadly, it's not as good. But even with visuals, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. Anyway, so and there's a couple of unnecessary scenes on some of the actors and the directors. I don't really care. I don't care about that woman fearing Sarah's going to take her spotlight. I want to see Sarah getting out of that situation, not this bloody woman crying about it. But following that story, episodes 8, 9 and 10 are just really fun, really enjoyable, and have a lot of great stuff, and it's great to see the Meddling Monk again. Episodes 11 and 12 go back to the more serious situation. We get a bit of seriousness in the previous couple of episodes, maybe not so much as Feast of Stephen, but this time it's amped back up to the level from the first 6, maybe slightly more in the last episode, as they're trying to, as it's the final push to stop the Daleks and save the day, and the ending with the Time Destructor, the second half of the episode, is devastating. And scary, actually. I honestly would, if I was at the BBFC and episode 12 survived, episode 12 of the Daleks Master Plan would be the first Doctor Who episode I would give a 12 rating to. It is scary. Well, it's not as scary as Blink or not as violent as Attack of the Cybermen, or even as upsetting or traumatizing as Dark Water, the latter of which is the only one of those 2 stories to get a 12, those 3 stories I should say, to get a 12 rating. The other ones RPG and U, respectively. Surprisingly, in the case of Attack of the Cybermen, because that was a bit violent. Well, not a bit, quite violent. But yeah, this would probably be the first 12 rated episode if it survived. I mean, the BBFC might have it put at PG, but then again, some of the latest series 11 and in some cases 10 and other new series stories, they've made 12 rated, and I think some of them could be okay at PG. Some PGs could be okay at U. And in some cases, there should be some U's or PGs at PG or 12. Attack the Sidemen PG. Really? So if I was at the BBFC, please, if anyone is from the BBFC, please hire me. I am available. Part-time only at the moment, but still available. And I would give this episode a 12 rating, and it would be the earliest Doctor Who episode to be given a 12 rating, and thus this story the earliest Doctor Who story to be rated 12. The Daleks was due to special features on the DVD, so that doesn't count. And the same for all the other pre-TV movie stories with a 12 rating. They're all special features at the moment. However, I do think at least 2 episodes from the William Hartnell era would get the 12 rating. This one and the Massacre Part 4, which we'll get onto next time. Maybe 1 or 2 in the Patrick Troughton era during the Fury from the Deep story, but when I rewatch that, I'll decide when I get to it. But besides, I would certainly say at maximum 5 of those episodes. 5 at max, 1 at minimum, 5 at maximum. But like I said, I'll see when I get round to that one. Rewatching that. But certainly Master Plan Part 12 and Massacre Part 4 would get the 12 ratings if I was at the BBFC. Beating the TV movie by, well, 30 years at getting the first 12 rated episode on the modern BBFC ratings. The TV movie, as it is, because these episodes are missing, the TV movie is now the earliest 12 rated episode. So yeah, followed swiftly by the Unquiet Dead and Dalek, and then moving on. So moving on from that, yeah, this is actually pretty. It's not that nice of it. It's not very nice, is it? It's pretty nasty. Sarah dies in a pretty nasty way. She's aged to death, and then we see the skeleton, and then the skeleton turns to dust. Christ, the only way you could make this more unsuitable for younger viewers is that if the skeleton broke and cracked before it turned to dust. The Doctor is also affected. This could be scary. And Stephen's okay, I suppose, somehow. Maybe it's because he wasn't out there for as long as the others. But I am surprised he doesn't get as much. Or maybe that G-force around him from Part 6 is still around him somehow. Maybe. They don't try to later on. They just threaten to kill him, but then they take him hostage. But yes, this is definitely a scary and traumatizing ending, certainly for younger viewers. I was feeling the tension in parts 11 and certainly part 12, especially when Chen was in that meeting room before he was exterminated. I felt the tension in the room with him, Sarah and Stephen captured by the Daleks. I was feeling the tension. That was pretty tensionous. And the episode doesn't end on a happy note. I mean, it ends on the fact they're glad the Daleks have been stopped. Woo! But Stephen and the Doctor then reminisce about the people who have died. And Stephen's very upset about this, and I think the ending of this definitely hints at what's going to happen in the middle of the last episode of the massacre. So we're getting signs of what's going to happen at the end of the next, well, towards the end of the next story, I should say, because it happens halfway through the episode, rather than at the very end, like in Kill the Moon. But we've definitely got hints at the Doctor and Stephen's argument in Massacre Part 4 starting to shimmer around this point, as Stephen's very upset and the Doctor doesn't really notice until he gets very upset, and then he's sad. So overall, the Daleks Master Plan, concluding thoughts on the remaining 6 episodes. Part 7 is the weakest of the story by far, but parts 8 to 12 are easily the best, especially the last 2, and my god, that last episode is amazing. It's also not that suitable for younger viewers, but certainly it's still amazing. So that was great. I really enjoyed that. Even the Feast of Stephen had a small level of, it's okay, it's good fun. I mean, I wouldn't really think it's a great idea to put this on just on its own at Christmas. Maybe if I was watching the entire thing, or at least the second half, after the first, of course. But it's okay. I mean, for a cutaway episode like Mission to the Unknown, it comes in, it does its job, it's okay. I'd actually consider it worse than Mission to the Unknown. However, Mission to the Unknown was its own story, whilst this is part 7 of 12 episodes. And so we have to measure the story as it is. Now, the first half of the story, I think, would have done well at a 9 out of 10. I think it started off at 7, 8-ish, and then it worked its way up to a 9. Feast of Stephen went down to a 4, 5, and then it worked its way back up to a 9, and then it went to 10 with the last 2 episodes, certainly with the last one. So, after all of that, here is my conclusion of the story overall. The Daleks Master Plan, even with the Feast of Stephen, is a fantastic story. I am so glad that this was not a disappointment on a rewatch, because I loved it on my first viewings, well, episodes 2, 5 and 10, rewatching, because I've already seen those on the Lost in Time DVD, but when I was doing my missing classic episodes reconstructions on Dailymotion back in the spring last year, and I had to use the surviving episodes to help fill in the gaps. So, but I'd already seen the missing episodes on this DVD and the other DVDs beforehand. But when I watched it back in the spring, I just loved the story, even with the Feast of Stephen, but I just loved the whole story as it was. I actually think I disliked the Feast of Stephen more back then, but here I think it's a bit better. But yeah, after rewatching the story in its entirety, it's still fantastic. In fact, I think I might even like it more. Feast of Stephen, not just being the only one, it's included, but it's also not the only one, but all the others as well. This is just a fantastic story. It doesn't have a very slow start, it's just gradually taking its time, but it still keeps you interested and wondering throughout, unlike some of the shorter episodes where their first, maybe sometimes second parts just drag, or the middle drags. This story, despite being 12 episodes and the 7th one having absolutely nothing to do with the rest of it, does not feel the same way. It is perfectly paced. I mean, it probably would have been better at 11 episodes, or if Mission to the Unknown was the first one. But otherwise, it's still perfectly paced. It's perfectly executed. It's perfect. And of course, it was eventually going to get to the 10 out of 10's point at some point during the story. I mean, how could it not? It's perfectly paced all the way through. I mean, maybe without the Feast of Stephen, but you could say that was a bit of a... that was necessary to give the main characters a bit of a break between all this fiasco with the Daleks. So, and enough time for the Daleks to test the training core, which we see in part 8. But still, it's perfectly paced. It is amazing. Even including Mission to the Unknown as well as an actual episode, as well as keeping Feast of Stephen, as I have to keep reminding you, it's still absolutely perfect. And yeah, again, exactly, Mission to the Unknown should have really been an episode of this, and you should have made it 13 parts. But, oh well, Mission to the Unknown as it stands is so that's why it got half the score of this. But Master Plan is outstanding. I fucking love this story. It definitely is still my favourite William Hartnell story, and is probably still my favourite Dalek story at this point in time. It might... I mean, there are going to be other Dalek stories that will top it, like Remembrance of the Daleks, Dalek, The Parting of the Ways, and Dead Day of the Doctor, but maybe Plans for the Daleks, we'll see when we get to that. But certainly, at this point in time, this is my favourite Dalek story at the point of time of doing the reviews. Certainly may... If none of the other Dalek stories before Remembrance change my mind, then it'll be by the time Remembrance comes around. That's when when Remembrance comes around, that'll be my favourite. But by that point, this will be my favourite for about 22 years of the show. Wow. And Remembrance will hold the title until Day of the Doctor. And Day of the Doctor may not even count that much. So Remembrance of the Daleks might keep that title going further forward past the 30-year mark. Wow. I mean, even if it gets to the Day of the Doctor, that's still 27. No, 25. It's still 25, more than this one, but this one still impressive. Wow, I just love this story. Even with the Feast of Stephen and including Mission to the Unknown. And, yeah, I mean, the first episode is probably my next least favourite after Feast and Mission. But I think besides Feast of Stephen, it gradually gets better. Then it takes the dip, and then it gets better and better. And then after that, it quickly gets better again. And then even better than that. By the very end. So, you all know what I'm going to give this episode, story. I'm going to give the Daleks Master Plan a whopping 10 out of 10! 10 out of 10, if you can hear me. Yep, this is absolutely perfect. So I'm not going to waste any more of mine or other people's time because this is a long review because this is going on for, wow, almost half an hour. And the other one was already a quarter of an hour. So, yeah, looks like we're going to have to end it here because it's going to be quite a long review. Anyway, so thank you all for watching. Next time I'll be looking at The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. Or The Massacre for short, which is also completely missing, so I'll be watching that on the Daily Motion. No surviving episodes on Lost in Time, so like the Mythmakers, I'm just going to be using my hands. Mythmakers and Mission to the Unknown. So yeah, I'm just going to use my hands and stuff. I think I had to do that for Marco Polo as well. Just no DVD to flash, basically. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Excuse me. Along with Guardian of the Solar System, Guardian of... Doctor, don't be so... No. I really like... he's basically... and... But... So... But yeah, this first half of the series... Brent Vaughan sounds exactly how he will... As... how the Nick... Hang on, excuse me a second. Hang on. No, it's fine. The Feast of Stephen is basically just a... So it was theorized. So... maybe they had a... So... yeah, even... Anyway, and then after episode 8 does. Not to mention 12. Excuse me. Then they just. Why do I kill? That sounded like I said, why do I kill? I meant, why do I feel like this? But it's still, or even as torture, intimidating, upset. It's pretty much all the others as well. And then faster. This is going to be how to edit.